Today we're going to do lesson 3. There's two very important things you're going to learn in lesson 3. One is how to change from one note to the other using a grace note. Another thing that you're going to learn, which is important here, is the throw on D and the different ways of playing that. So change of note with a grace note. This is shown on the stave here. So you can see you have the low G and then the low A separated by the high G grace note. So what we're looking for to play this is so the way I play this is as I sound the low G and then raise the low A finger and the high G at the same time and just quickly put the high G finger back on the chanter. So that's very slowly. So when you speed that up, it then becomes. So practice that until you've got the hang of it. Mistakes when changing from one note to the other is to not place the grace note truly between the notes, but sometimes a little bit after or sometimes a little bit before. So just to demonstrate that, a common mistake would be this. When in fact what we're looking for is, or sometimes also some people place it just before the change, which would be, and what we're looking for is, mastered changing from low G to low A with a G grace note in between. We'd now like you to try changing from a B to a low A with a G grace note in between. So just as before, you sound the B, then as you go down to the low A, you raise the high G finger at the same time as you close to make the low A. So blowing the B. So as I'm descending, I'm opening the high G and closing the high G when it reaches the low A at the same time. So the G grace note is truly between the B and the low A. This is shown on here as such, so you have a little exercise here just so you can try this very slowly, which now makes you practice moving from the low G to the A, then sounding the B, and then dropping back down to the low A using a G grace note. So that little exercise should sound something like this. So you might want to play that as a round and play. Play it very, very slowly until you have that right, making sure that the grace notes are truly in between the notes when you play them. The actual time that you take to make the grace note at this stage should be a lot slower than what you will actually eventually play it at, and it's better that you do this and practice it slowly to get it right. So your grace note might sound something like this. Or from the B to the low A. Just so you get it right, but eventually what we're looking for is or even faster. So the last movement I'd like to cover off in this section is moving from a C to a B with the G grace note in between, and that is represented again on the board here. There's the C, there's the B with the G grace note in between, and that is simply same idea as you're sounding the C and you want to go down to the B. You start the movement to descend, but as you're descending the B finger, you're also raising the G and then closing the high G finger to end that grace note. So that is very slowly. And the sound that you're eventually going to be looking for is so practice that very slowly, and all the exercises in the start of this chapter, and then we're able to move on to another little exercise. That is all that we've learned so far in lesson 3. We now have a little exercise that I've drawn up on the board here for you. This starts with a low G, and you go from the low G to a low A with the G grace note, and then you drop down to the low G again. As you see, it's got a little tail on it. That means it's half the value of the low A before it. Then from the low G, you go into a set of triplets, going up from the low G to the low A with a G grace note, and then it's a D and an E grace note all in the low A, and then you go from the low A up to a C. You make a B, going down to the B with a G grace note, then back to the C, which is cut because it's got a little tail on it that tells you it's half the value of the B before it. And then we go back to from the C to the B with a G grace note into the triplets just to finish with a G, D and an E grace note on the B. So once you have mastered that exercise, you can then look for the next video for lesson 3, part 2.